My feeling is that energy is probably the most critical problem outside of inflation on the domestic scene. The comprehensive proposal that I'm participating in putting together as a member of the Energy Conference Committee is part of the answer to that problem. I think the President is correct in setting a level for our oil importation in this country. This will do a number of things, but the primary thing it'll push us toward is more energy independence in this country, and I'm hopeful that we'll achieve that so that the foreign policy of this country and, frankly, our economy won't be, our standards of our economy won't be set by other countries.
No, it's not my committee's responsibility to make the final selection. That would be up to the entire board, and I expect that that would come, although I'm not chairman of the board, you understand, and I cannot control the meetings of the Board of Trustees. I would expect that probably within 3 weeks or a month that the board will finally take some action, take some final action.
The volunteers plan an extensive campaign this year designed to help the Heart Fund in its continuing effort to combat heart disease. This year's goal, $900,000. State Chairman Hugh Smith, who 3 years ago underwent heart surgery, says it's important to ask residents to help.
We found out with research that the people who do not give to the Heart Association are people who have not been asked. And that's the thing that I'm trying to really drive home to these volunteers, is don't be afraid or ashamed to ask for a contribution.
The governor's wife, Mrs. Bobby James, commended the group on its work to improve life for all Alabamians, while Heart Sunday chairman Kay Ivey said February 24th will be a big day for the campaign. That's when an extra push will be made to collect from both the business community and residents throughout the state. Heart Fund Chairman Hugh Smith has high hopes for the thousands of volunteers. Smith says he's confident Alabama's Heart Fund volunteers will have no problems collecting the $900,000 goal. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News at the Governor's Mansion.
For 6 years, Bill Battle was head coach at the University of Tennessee, compiling a 59, 22, and 2 record. However, he traded Neyland Stadium for this building back in 1977. It's international headquarters for Disco Aluminum Products in Selma. Battle was recently promoted president and chief operating officer, and now instead of teaching cross-body blocks, he heads a corporation specializing in thermal windows.
I think there are many similarities in coaching and business. I think you obviously have to get teamwork and harmony and people working in the same direction. I think there's a head coach that sets the direction of where the rest of the group wants to go, or where he wants the rest of the group to go, and there's I think there's a relationship between the assistant coaches and what they try to accomplish, and the department heads or the middle management group of a company such as ours. And then there are the players that win or lose the game, and those are, in our company, the people that design and build the windows and sell the windows. And I think the efforts of recruiting are very similar to the sales and marketing program that we have. So there are many similarities. The bottom line is how many games you win. The difference is that in business you can schedule more than 11 games a year.
How many games you win in business? Are you a better corporate president than you were a football coach?
I don't know. I guess that remains for history to determine. I would like to be able to win at the rate of 72% though, and I think we'll do all right.
You may never see Bill Battle listed as a collegiate coach again, but you might see his name in Fortune's list of top executives. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
Auburn jumped to a 10-4 lead. This is Rich Valvicius scoring. Val took a terrific blow to his head in a second-half spill, but was said to be okay at an Oxford hospital. Suddenly, the Tigers began making turnovers. Freshman Roger Steig cashed this one in. The SEC's leading scorer, John Stroud, got hot then, and he shot the Ole Miss Rebels out to an 18-point halftime lead. Stroud ended the day with 31. The Tigers continued to be their own worst enemy in the second half and could not cut into the Ole Miss lead at all. Auburn shot 39%, the Rebels 59%. Coach Sonny Smith called it his team's worst performance since he's been at Auburn. This is Phil Snow reporting.
Do it again. Okay.
Judge Varner ordered the Montgomery County Jail to overcome its overcrowding problem. The county commission promised to fund and operate a restitution home which would house nearly 20 work-release inmates. The commission has also passed a resolution to build a new jail, but the most concentrated effort has been directed toward the restitution home. The commission has until January 31st to file an updated expansion plan with Judge Varner, but the commission says it has little new information to give the court. County Commission Chairman Mac McKinney says a contract with the state to staff the restitution home is still waiting for signatures, and negotiations are underway for the purchase of a home somewhere in the city. County Attorney Knox Argo says he hopes something solid will develop in the next 2 weeks, but he says a report showing little material progress will still have to be filed. Argo says he can only hope Judge Varner will understand the commission is working on the project. In other business, the commission adopted a resolution redistricting the county to conform with the present legislative districts. The change was reluctantly endorsed under orders from federal Judge Frank Johnson. In 1978, Johnson ruled Montgomery County's at-large commission election unconstitutional. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Now, I'm also introducing a bill to remove sale tax exemption from over 67 items in the state of Alabama, which will generate approximately $225 million annually. With the exception, we're going to leave the sale tax exemption on gasoline and motor fuel because gas is too high as it is. But they're against this. The governor has not mentioned this one time. The speaker has not mentioned this one time.
Why do you not think that they have considered this as a possibility, at least in the public eye?
Well, of course, if you remove sale tax exemption on manufacturing machines, then you would affect the governor's personal business. If you remove the sale tax on farm equipment, then you will affect the Speaker of the House personal business because he's in the lumber business.
The Fairview Medical Center admits an average of 3,600 patients a year. 36% of those are Medicaid patients. In November of last year, Medicaid payments to Fairview Medical stopped. Medicaid now owes the hospital more than $500,000. Assistant Hospital Administrator Robert Taylor III.
The State of Alabama Medical Services Administration has not responded to Fairview Medical Center's plea for payment of the staggering amount owed Fairview Medical Center. The State of Alabama Medicaid program is forcing Fairview Medical Center into a distressful situation that Fairview Medical Center has no control. The problem is being further aggravated by a sudden influx of Medicaid patients.
Taylor says if Fairview Medical is not reimbursed by Medicaid, it's likely the facility will have to close. And this, he says, will force the indigent patients whom Fairview Medical serves into the city's emergency rooms for treatment at an annual cost to the city of $300,000. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News. This workshop brought together CETA, adult, and community educators from around Alabama. One speaker called the workshop, which was sponsored by a CETA grant in the State Education Department, a milestone, because it brought together the three groups to work on a common problem. Dr. Bobby Walden, a community education coordinator, says the workshop has a threefold purpose.
Their charge is to come up with a coordination plan to better facilitate resources, to utilize the assets of all of our programs, CETA, Adult Ed, Community Ed, and to try and avoid duplications as far as reaching the people and helping the people there at the local level.
A report on the results of today's workshop will be drafted and sent to Governor James. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
At the current levels, the way things are going now, it's got to be new revenues found to provide these programs, because we know it has increased over the years, and it's come to the point now that somebody has to face up to it, or many thousands of people will suffer from the consequences.
This stuff spread out all everywhere.
Just tell the television camera you're going to stand on your prepared statement. You have nothing more to say than watch the cameraman go berserk.
This afternoon for our year-end announcement.
We've been very, very pleased here at the Alabama Development Office by the combined efforts, and it's resulted in a super year. We're looking forward to an even better year for 1980. The hurricane. We're working with the Space and Rocket Museum in Huntsville to develop a 325 new ball game as per the last 5 years. We have to be cognizant of very active. In vote one was the acquisition of one-stop permitting for industrial development here in the state. This allows us to accommodate water and air using industries very rapidly.
When I want a refreshing drink, I know just what I need. When I choose, I know I can't lose, 'cause milk's the one for me.
Commercials like this one for the American Dairy Association are becoming more and more common. The commercials aren't sponsored by one particular company, but by an association of producers. There are associations for milk producers, pork producers, and now beef producers have a chance to decide whether they want a national board to help promote beef products. Cattle ranchers have until Sunday to register to vote on a referendum that would set aside 20 cents of every $100 paid for beef. The 20 cents will go into a fund to create a beef research and information program. A 60-member board will produce promotional spots to combat what an Extension Service spokesman calls anti-beef propaganda by nutritionists. The money would also go toward beef research and education for beef producers. Cattlemen who want to vote on the issue must register at the Agriculture Stabilization and Conservation Service this week. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
6 years ago, Houston County Sheriff A.B. Clark decided the county needed a bloodhound to track criminals. Instead of going to the county commission or other agencies for funds to buy a track dog, the sheriff bought it himself. Several years later, the sheriff increased his canine team to 3 bloodhounds. One died a month ago, and now there are only 2.
Well, you know, our position is if a crime happened, we want to solve it, and these dogs have been a great asset to our county, and because of a robbery or children lost, we want to do a good job, and they've been a great asset to Houston County, and that's my purpose for getting the dogs, because, you know, curbing, stopping the crime, and let them know not to come to Houston County to do the robbery and that kind of stuff.
Deputy Sheriff Leon Baxter keeps the dogs at his home. Once a week he takes them out for a training session, but Sheriff Clark still assumes full financial responsibility. The sheriff says these dogs have tracked as many as 2 criminals in one day. He says they've also tracked a 3-year-old runaway who went to sleep in the back of an abandoned car. Sheriff Clark says track dogs like these are in great demand, and one of his dogs, Sandra, is expecting puppies in February. The sheriff says that several sheriffs from throughout the state of Alabama have already asked for puppies from that litter. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News in Dothan.
The windows are locked. All the doors in the house are locked. You can leave and feel safe against burglars, right? Wrong. A lot of bolts and door locks can easily be forced or jimmied with a credit card or a knife, or in this case, screwdrivers. It stands to reason your home will be safer if you use a harder lock to crack and a solid wooden door. Hollow doors will not stand up to pressure and generally can be kicked in without much trouble. Use a single deadbolt lock on your outside doors, or use a double cylinder, particularly if a glass pane is within the reach of the door. It prevents a burglar from breaking the glass and reaching through. The double deadbolt requires a key from the inside as well as the outside. Now, these 2 locks should work, but they're of no value if you've left the doors unlocked. About 50% of the homes in the Montgomery area that are burglarized were left unoccupied and unlocked. Windows must be locked too, and window locks should be more sophisticated if they're to keep burglars out than the crescent type most of us are used to. Here are some other tips for safety. Make sure your house is well lighted with lights over both the front and back doors. Drape your front picture windows and close the window curtains at night to keep the inside from being seen from the street. If you're going to be gone for a while, notify police and tell them how long you intend to be away. Leave a car in the driveway if there's one available. Don't let mail and newspapers accumulate. And don't leave notes pinned on the door telling friends and deliverymen you're away. It's not a bad idea, too, to leave small objects outside to give the appearance of a lived-in house, something inexpensive like a rake or a broom. And you might want to have a simple alarm system installed that's noisy enough to alert neighbors. A good idea is to organize your neighborhood against break-ins by calling Montgomery Crime Prevention, 834-7187. Police officers will be happy to come to your neighborhood meeting and explain how you can work together for safety and put crime on the run. This is Coping, and I'm Ivy Berman, WSFA TV News.
President Carter has ordered that registration for the Selective Service System be reinstituted. That is, to have young men between the ages of 18 and 26 identify themselves to the Selective Service and keep the agency informed of their current addresses. The President has not ordered that these individuals be examined or classified for the draft, nor has he asked Congress for the power to draft people. What he apparently is doing is creating a pool from which inductions can be made on a relatively short notice if needed. The White House says resumption of registration is not linked to any recruiting shortcomings of the all-volunteer forces, but is merely intended to increase the readiness of the armed forces to respond to a major emergency situation. The White House adds that the all-volunteer force was never intended to stand alone in time of crisis. Rather, it will be augmented by reservists and eventually draftees. How will the registration system work? The details are still being worked out, but several options are being considered. One proposal would have young men go to their local post office and register. Forms will request name, address, date of birth, and parents' names and addresses. Registration cards and physicals are not anticipated at this time. Registering women also is not part of the plan right now. That would require congressional action. But a Lou Harris poll released today indicates that a majority of the American people, 56%, favor the Equal Rights Amendment and believe women will be drafted for combat if the ERA is approved. How long will it take to actually draft someone? The White House says that depends upon the circumstances, including how much advance work had been done. A figure of 7 months has been suggested, including processing and training the individual once in the armed forces. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News. When was the last time you had your silver valuables appraised? Last year? 2 years ago? Well, you might be surprised to find out that a piece of silverware or a silver tray that you acquired a few years ago is now worth hundreds or thousands of dollars more. If in the unfortunate event your silver is stolen, do you have enough insurance to cover the loss? Montgomery Insurance Agent Richard Harif says it's a good idea to have the items appraised once a year now, considering the wildly fluctuating market. An appraisal, he says, serves two purposes.
First of all, it gives you an indication of what value the item or items may have. And beyond that, it is required for insurance purposes to specifically insure them.
There are people who do nothing but appraise silver and other valuables. They are listed in the yellow pages. Or you can check with the company you bought the items from. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
The Ethics Commission probe includes 2 insurance companies, both located in the same offices in this building in downtown Montgomery. They are the Adams Life Insurance Company and Bankers Credit Life Insurance Company. Incorporation papers of both companies show Ralph Adams as a member of the board of directors. I've been told the Ethics Commission is looking at the records of both of these insurance companies. In his statement of economic interest filed with the Ethics Commission, Dr. Adams listed an income from Bankers Credit Life of over $10,000. That same statement, which law prohibits us from showing on television, does not show Ralph Adams as being on the board of directors of Adams Life Insurance Company or that he's received any income from that company. This section of the ethics form asks for information on companies partially owned but not providing income to the person filing. Adams Life Insurance Company did not appear here on Dr. Adams' statement. When asked about the investigation of Adams, Ethics Commission Executive Director Melvin Cooper said, "No comment." Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
In the report, Alabama State is one of the universities that Bronner says doesn't appear to follow the standards necessary for him to understand the financial position of the school. Under the page headed Alabama State University, there are no figures. Bronner's explanation for the blank page: The information is too sketchy to determine any meaningful financial data. ASU President Levi Watkins called a rare news conference to respond to questions about the school's finances. He says his institution does follow the correct procedures in filing financial statements, but that the required forms are outdated.
They do not relate to the kind of system we have. As a matter of fact, we X them out and we write in and that sort. And it may be, I have not seen it, but if that's the kind of report that's that Dr. Bonner and his group made, I would say the sketchiness is more to the form that we were finished to use rather than the system we have.
Watkins says Alabama State's business office is computerized and one of the most updated systems in the state. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Expecting various reports and analyses of university financial statements and budget submissions for the coming legislative session. Much of the information contained in these reports were ultimately even those schools which were utilizing and applying the so-called NACUBO standards, and these are the generally accepted accounting principles for presentation of financial data for institutions of higher learning. Even within those schools that were utilizing those methods and principles of accounting, there was differentiation in the interpretation of some principles, so that at any given time, based on the financial statements that were being presented, there was no way to compare the exact financial position of one school as compared to the other, much less to ascertain with any degree of certainty the exact financial position and the amount of discretionary monies that were available to a particular school or college.
Brenda Payne is charging that Ross Clayton Funeral Home and the owners of Remont Cemetery allegedly removed the remains of her mother, Emma Lee Payne, from this grave. She says that her mother was buried on March 20th, 1953 in this grave. She alleges in the suit that she came back to this grave site on about May 13, 1979, and discovered that the vault, coffin, and bodily remains of her deceased mother, Mrs. Emma Lee Payne, was missing from this burial plot. I called the office of Ross Clayton Funeral Home and talked to the director of the funeral home, Callaway Rosk, and asked him if he would comment about the lawsuit. At the time, he said he had no knowledge of the suit. I read the suit to him over the telephone, and he said he would talk to his attorney before he would have any comment. I've been told by informed sources that there will be other lawsuits in connection with the Payne case and other cemeteries around Montgomery, and that Ross Clayton will be involved. In her lawsuit against Ross Clayton and the cemetery owners, Brenda Payne says, and I'm quoting from the suit that was filed today, the plaintiff has become mentally and emotionally upset, made sick and nervous, and she continues to have no known place where she can honor the memory of her deceased mother. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News, Remont Cemetery.
The prospect of skiing can be just a little bit frightening for a group of Alabama Special Olympians who had never seen snow before, let alone ski. The world of boots, bindings, and goggles can be confusing.
What happened?
There were the usual minor pitfalls, but by and large, the Special Olympians were quick learners.
These special athletes will do basically as well as any of our people that walk in off the street. We just simplify their terminology a little bit, do a more verbal demonstration than verbalization, and they're skiing. They're more enthusiastic, courageous, easier to work with than the average public. Tremendous people to work with. We love it. Push hard with them here. 1 foot at a time. Slide one, and then the other. There. That's it. And the other. Just slide your feet. Good. Very good. Much better.
With less than 4 hours of instruction, most of the athletes were able to ski, and it was time for the games to be officially opened.
Let me win. Let me win. But if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. Let me be brave. Good luck to you tomorrow.
And so the stage is set for the start of the 1980 Winter Special Olympics. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at the competition.
Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports at the Winter Special Olympics in Boone, North Carolina.
The Special Olympic goal states, "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt." The athletes lived up to those words. Athletes were placed into 3 different divisions, the courses ranging from 5 to 25 yards. All the kids were winners, every participant received a medal, and you could sense the camaraderie the kids had.
We're looking at EDA grant money, we're looking at FHA, and also we're considering the money from the general fund. We are looking at different areas, and hopefully we can come up with this $2.3 million that we need for this state-owned farmers market. We do have support of the governor on it that was in his campaign, and we do have support of the governor and others that have indicated some interest. We can just come up with the money.
In making the announcement, Governor James said he had chosen a very capable man. William James Samford is an Alabama lawyer who is now working with the litigation and liquidation section of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Throughout the decision-making process, James said he was interested in choosing someone familiar with regulation. Samford's position with the FDIC is in regulation. Samford is an Auburn graduate with a law degree from the University of Alabama School of Law. Taking the pictures off the wall and preparing to close the door on a 9-year career with the PSC, Commission President Juanita McDaniel spent her last day in office. Ms. McDaniel's resignation came in the wake of a reported grand jury investigation of possible wrongdoing, but Ms. McDaniel says she hasn't done anything wrong, and her reason for leaving is different.
I feel like that this position on a regulatory body, not only here in Alabama, but everywhere, it does cause a great deal more of investigations. And I think that my actions on the commission have certainly been difficult for my family and for myself. And there was a combination of things, the reason why I felt like that now was the time for me to leave.
The new PSC president, William Samford, will take office February 11th. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
A supplement to what is up here.
From a distance, it kind of looks like a giant dragonfly, but that's no ordinary helicopter you're watching. It's Smokey the Bear's answer to putting out a forest fire and putting it out fast.
There are 10 of these big, green, mean-looking machines currently based in Alabama, and in a state where fire destroyed close to 500,000 acres of valuable forest land last year, these helicopters will be a much-needed addition to Alabama's firefighting efforts.
We have areas in Alabama, up in the northeastern part of the state, that we've had a lot of trouble getting to. You just can't get up to fight those fires on foot. So this will give us something now that we've needed for a long, long time.
Each copter cost about $6 million. Its water bucket holds 2,000 gallons and takes just 45 seconds to fill. Since time is critical when fighting a fire, every Alabama county has a designated water pickup point that's no more than 17 minutes from any potential blaze area in the state. And that's not all. Firefighters trapped by an out-of-control blaze could be airlifted to safety in the water bucket. The 10 new helicopters will not only cut down on firefighting expenses, they'll also protect one of Alabama's major resources and an industry that generates over $3 billion yearly into the state's economy. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News on the Alabama River.
The fire broke out at 3063 Pine Hill Drive about noon today. The victim, whose name is being withheld pending notification of next of kin, was alone in the house at the time. His daughter saw the flames when she arrived at the house a little after noon and called the fire department. Firefighters put the fire out in a matter of minutes, but the man inside was already dead. The fire apparently was started by some grease on a stove. The kitchen was gutted by the flames. The rest of the house suffered heavy smoke damage. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Ireland told the Joint Legislative Budget Committee he could not stand before them and say all was well in the state's mental health system. He says mental health needs $6.1 million in supplemental money this year. He says the money would go for operations and capital outlay within the system. Ireland only presented the supplemental request to the committee and said the recommended budget of $126 million for next year will not be enough. He says the governor will have to amend the original recommendation. Ireland says the original budget recommendation would not be enough to operate the system next year, much less provide the funds necessary to begin progress toward compliance with federal court-ordered reforms. He says if the state doesn't start spending money on meeting the court order, Alabama officials will wind up back in federal court. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Accept this check from the Alabama Fire Company in the amount of $1,703,142.47 for this past year, and we appreciate. Good to see you. Great.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you would, why don't you smile real pretty for us, holding there. There you go.
This was the last play in Rich Valavicia's collegiate career. While trying to block Ole Miss forward Elston Turner, he was knocked to the floor unconscious.
When I hit, I was out, and the next thing I knew was I was in the ambulance going to the hospital, and I looked up and people were working on me, and that's the only thing that I could remember.
He suffered a mild concussion on the plate, and doctors advised him to quit basketball for the remainder of the season. So while his teammates battled Kentucky Wednesday night, Val sat on the bench, a spectator for the first time. He will never again wear the orange and blue. However, his efforts are not forgotten. Fans remember his all-out style of play and gave him a standing ovation before last night's ball game. Even the Kentucky basketball players rose in tribute.
What are you going to remember most fondly about your basketball career?
Well, the biggest thing that I'm going to remember about it, at least when I look back on it 10, 15 years from now, I think that when somebody asked me what's the biggest thing you know about your career is I'm going to say that at least I always gave it 100%, and that's just the big thing that's going to be in my mind. As long as I gave 100%, and that's the way I feel in my heart, I'm satisfied.
The ballgame could not have been closer or more frustrating for Auburn. The Tigers played near flawless basketball in the first half, hitting 50% of their shots from the field. A fast-paced offense spread the Kentucky defense, allowing Auburn inside penetration. At the other end of the court, the Tigers mainly stuck to a man-to-man defense that kept the Cats puzzled. Kentucky hit only 40% of its shots, and at one point, Joe Hall benched his starting lineup. Auburn even out-rebounded Kentucky 23-14, and the Tigers led at the half 39-30. Things started on the same note in the second period. An early scoring blitz increased the Tigers' lead to 12 with 13 minutes to play. That's when the fun stopped. Kentucky outscored Auburn